When I was 16 years old, I started doing mosquito control work. What that entailed is going out to some pretty flooded fields and dipping for mosquito larvae. And I'd look in there and I'd find mosquito larvae and then we'd treat. It was a lot of time outdoors and I was just into starting to drive. And my dad was telling me stories of some old Toyota pickup trucks and how even their two-wheel drive pickup trucks would go just about anywhere. That really got me jazzed about the idea, and I wanted a vehicle. Stumbled across a number of old barn finds or farm finds, trucks that have just been out in the fields for ages, all rusted out, cratered. And then the golden nugget. I found a Toyota Land Cruiser, one of the older FJ40s. It was an amazing little car. And of course, it looks like it had not been run for the last 30, 40 years. It's probably closer to 20. This is an old 1978 Toyota Land Cruiser, also known as an FJ40. Anyway, I knew that it was kind of abandoned. It was sitting on a farmer's field. And I went to talk to the farmer and say, hey, I want to buy your Toyota. And he absolutely said no. He was not interested in selling it. And that's fine. It was his baby. That he never drove, and I worked at mosquito control for 6 years, and during that entire 6 years that little Toyota Land Cruiser stayed right where it was, never got moved, and it kind of made me sad, but in the back of my mind I'd always been thinking of that 16-year-old dream to own one of these FJ40s. In the intervening 30 years I've owned close to 50 vehicles, including 2 Toyota Land Cruisers, both from the 90s. But neither one gave me the same feeling as that little FJ40 Land Cruiser out in the yard. And that's where I'm going to change things today. Now, obviously, I can't buy my dream vehicle. Those things are way too expensive. So let me tell you what I'm going to get. I'm going to get one of these instead. This is a mid-2000s Toyota FJ Cruiser. And these were built to kind of simulate the old FJ40s. I'm totally stoked and excited about this. The seller initially wanted $7,500. This is how the conversation went. Me: would you be willing to consider an offer for your FJ? Thank you. Owner: sure. What are you thinking? Me: I am thinking $5,000. I'm a little nervous about the mileage. Owner: it's been exceptionally maintained. I'd consider $5,800. Me: do you happen to know how many owners it has had? Owner: just one. It was my neighbor's. I'm just helping him sell it. He drove it a lot for work. Me: okay. I'm willing to go $5,300 max. Thank you for your kind responses. Owner: let me think about it. Me: thank you kindly for considering my offer. Owner: if we do accept, when could you pick it up? Me: but today might not be possible, so we are probably looking at Monday evening, at which point I can bring cash. Are there any concerns you have for the vehicle driving a few hours home to my hometown after purchase? Owner: none. The only reason our neighbor is getting rid of it is he is not driving as much for work and thought it was time to upgrade. Let's meet in the middle. $5,500? Me: I really can't go above the aforementioned $5,300. Happy to move forward if you are willing. Then I thought about it a little bit. This is not in the messaging. And then I decided, would the middle of the middle work at $5,400? So that's how negotiations went. Okay, here I am at the bank, ready to withdraw $5,400 for this FJ Cruiser with 345,000 miles on it. Let's hope this is a good deal. So that's a real large amount of money to spend on a car. I like spending less than $5,000, and my average has been less than $3,000 or $3,500. So hope we're making the right decision. Okay, I'm headed off to see the FJ Cruiser. I've got about an hour and 7-minute drive ahead of me before I get to inspect it. Whenever I come to inspect a car, I always bring just a couple of things with me. I usually bring a piece of cardboard just so I don't have to lie on the dirty ground. Next, I bring some gloves, again, so I don't get oil all over my hands. Some paper towels in order to check the oil, wipe down anything in order to see. Plus, I've got a little tire gauge here. Now, the smaller air pump, or the hand air pump, is actually just to brace the hood in case the hood struts are blown, which is likely on a car this old. And then I also like to bring a full-powered air pump to just pump up the tires if necessary. It'll also check out the 12-volt outlets, make sure those are all working. Here are the important things that I'll be looking for. First of all, are the CV boots intact? They're the boots that cover the constant velocity joints. Those are super important for anything that drives with the front wheels. Are the tie rod ends and ball joints intact and good? Transmission fluid smell, well, I can't check that since the transmission is sealed. I'll be looking at the oil to make sure that it doesn't have any water in it and that it looks nice. Any sort of differential wind from the rear differential, I'll be listening for that. Apparently the inner fenders can bulge and rip, so we'll look at that. There could be a transmission shudder between 20 miles an hour and 40 miles an hour. And finally, as you're coming to a stop, there can be a transmission clunk. And that would mean either the drive line has a problem or the transmission has an issue. And then we're also going to be looking for any sort of steering wheel shake at higher speeds. There's that impressive number, 345,302 miles. Even before testing out the car, I like to see how much rust is around the outside of the car, under the car, and kind of do a full inspection. Then I'll open up the hood and take a look at the oil condition and the engine bay. As you can see, it's a very good looking car. Not a whole lot of surface rust on the body here. Just giving a good inspection all the way around. Just on the top surface. We'll go down to the bottom surface here in a moment. Yeah, that looks actually pretty clean. The front of the car has quite a few rock chips. You can imagine 345,000 miles later, you're gonna pick up a lot. There's a bunch of rock chips right up here on this portion of the car. Any flat surface that faces the road, it's going to be chewed up pretty good, but overall looks pretty good. I would say a little bit of touch-up paint will go a long ways here. Another thing that I'm looking for are these little cracks in the windshield. Here are two more kind of larger ones. These are, I would say, half a dime size in diameter. Here's another one. There's a few others throughout this windshield. The reason I look at these rock chips is it's usually about $75 or $85 per rock chip to repair. If you're doing a whole bunch of them, it may be $85 for the first and like $25 for each significant other rock chip. In total, I counted 5 rock chips. All of these fenders look quite straight. Obviously no curb rash since they're quite a bit taller than a curb would be. You can see a little bit of wear here. Not too worried about that. Definitely no impact. Inside of the wheel wells look really quite smooth, no rippling. Back here we're missing one of these guards. This is the front wheel, right front wheel. We'll check the left front wheel, probably be about the same. Around the outside skirt of this car, looking pretty good. Let's look at the inner part here of the right rear wheel. Fender well, looks good. Mud guard is intact, just as the front is intact as well. Again, I'm just looking for any sort of sign of damage or an accident, but everything looks really quite straight. And this wheel well as well generally has some indication if there's a problem. Mud guards there. Along the bottom rocker panel, looks pretty good. And here's the front left wheel well. Oh, there it is. There's that missing piece of plastic on this one as well. Not sure what's going on there, but not a huge deal. That's pretty good. Now my favorite part, we're gonna go underneath the car. Looking pretty good. You can see that there is some surface rust along some of the surfaces here, but it's not completely rusted out like I would have expected in a Kentucky environment. There's some rust there. Again, just kind of looks like surface rust. Nothing too terrible. Looking up through here, you can see something's rusted there. Not too bad. Looking inside at the pulleys, you can see some surface rust there as well on the engine. Definitely has an oil leak. Doesn't look too bad. The air conditioner was just running, so you do have a puddle of water where the air conditioning drains. Good that the drain works at least. Yeah, that front looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the CV boots and the steering rack. So here's the steering rack. Rubber on that looks pretty good. Also, the steering rack on this side looks great. Here's the left front CV boot. Outer looks great. Inner, and what I'm looking for is some rips and some grease that flies out of those. Once that starts to happen, the CVs generally have some problem. CV standing for constant velocity joints. Looks great. Okay, looking at the right front, there's the inner, also looks good on that CV boot. And there's the outer, looks good on that one as well. Everything looks pretty nice for as many miles. And again, I think this has been pretty well maintained. All right, let's take a look at this left mid area of the car. Again, you can see surface rust, but nothing so horrible that it makes me too nervous. Certainly nothing rusting through. You can see the full thickness of the metal there as you look in these little holes. That's a good sign. Looking at the underside, I don't see a huge amount of problem there. This is looking really clean for a Kentucky car. I'm pretty sure this was an import to the area, just judging by the lack of rust on all these frame rails. All right, here's the right midsection outer of the frame. Again, looks pretty decent. Again, some surface rust, nothing to be concerned about. Frame extensions look really good. Obviously, the exhaust is going to have some rust on it, but even then, it's not horrible. Prop shaft looks like it probably got replaced. That looks pretty new. U-joint looks okay as well. I'll get underneath the car and give it a good push and pull on the prop shaft, both front and back, just to make sure there's nothing too worn on that. Here we are at the rear of the car. You can see up here some of the body attachment plates are pretty rusted out. A lot of salt and water will collect in the back of the car because it's thrown up by the wheels, and so they have a tendency to get more rust. But again, here's your rear differential, rear suspension. It all looks pretty decent. I don't see frame rail rot or anything like that. This is in very, very good condition. I'm pretty happy with what I see. This one comes with a tow hitch, which is great. Something that I would have added otherwise in order to carry my CT125 around with me. Very pleased. Okay, well, I'm gonna go bang and pull on some things on the underside of the front suspension, make sure the tie rod ends are all good, make sure that prop shaft is okay as well. I probably won't be able to film that, but I will point out what I'm doing. Okay, so this is the differential, the center differential end of the prop shaft, where you've got a little U-joint. I see grease zerks, which is great. That means that this is all greasable, so I'll probably wind up greasing that. I don't see a huge amount of problem. Prop shaft looks nice all the way down to the other joint back here at the rear differential. It even has some weights on it, so it's been a properly balanced rear drive prop shaft. I'll yank on it. Yeah, it feels really tight. Yanking on it did not move a whole lot. That's a good sign. Now I'll check out the front prop shaft. All right, maybe a little harder to see, but there's your joint right there on the back end. This is at the center differential. Actually, it's not even a differential, it's a transfer case. I apologize. I'm used to a full-time four-wheel drive versus a part-time full-wheel drive. This is just a straight transfer case, which means it's got no differential inside. Here's the front of that front prop shaft going into the front differential. It's pretty rusted, so I'll take a look at that a little closer. Again, I'll give it a good yank and let you know if there's a problem with it. So basically with the steering, you want to play around with the tie rod ends and the ball joints, make sure those are nice and tight on both sides. They are, actually. And then we've got this front sway bar and a rear sway bar you want to take a look at those end links as well, make sure those are nice and tight, and they are as well. So again, very well put together vehicle for its age. I can't really complain with what I'm seeing on the underside of this car whatsoever. This looks a lot nicer than most of the Kentucky Toyota vehicles that I see. And again, it's got massive numbers of miles. I also don't see any leaking from this rear differential. So either it's completely out of oil or it's in good condition, which I'm guessing. Next, we'll inspect the interior. What I'm looking for is on the seats. You can see a little crease, but no tear through. So the foam is definitely depressed there, but no tear through on the fabric. That's pretty surprising on this front driver's seat. Looking down here at the pedals, everything looks pretty good there. We have a random wire hanging down, so I'll take a look and see what that's connected to. But looks pretty good. Everything looks nice on the dash. Now, when we come over to the buttons, this kind of tells you a lot about which type and package you've got with this vehicle. So you see I've got a rear parking sensor. This came pretty much standard with most of them, as well as the ability to turn off an internal security sensor. So if someone's inside or breaks a window or something like that, probably causes the alarm to go off. Beyond that, there are no other buttons. So it is not, this guy does not have your active track. It does not have your locking rear differential. It does have a part-time four-wheel drive system, which is activated here, where you can go from 2 high down to 4 high and then over and up to 4 low. I guess all the automatic transmissions came with that. The manuals came with a full-time four-wheel drive with a differential that could lock in the center. This has a transfer case like I mentioned earlier. Apologize for calling it a differential. I was just kind of looking at it from the outside. The radio controls look nice. Looks a little sticky in here, you know. Someone's been drinking pop. That's okay, not a big deal. Let's take a look at around this footstep area. No rust. Looks really quite well maintained without a whole bunch of problem. Opening up the rear left side door. Seats look in really good shape. I would say these seats probably have not seen much, if any, usage. All right, we'll go around to the other side and take a look. This right side or passenger side looks great as well. Take a look inside of the glove box. Got your owner's manual, probably a couple other warranty things. That's great. I love how it has the owner's manual. A lot of these older rigs, they somehow got lost. You can see they had a carpet option put in here. Rear seats look good down here. Almost no rust on this rail. Look at the hinges, look really good. Coming around to the rear of the vehicle, looks pretty good. I'll check to see if the rear window pops open. Apparently that's an issue. Nothing that I really see bothers me too much. Yeah, it pops in, so even the plastic in here looks like it's not all gnarlied up. Rear strut seems to be holding this door open. That's really nice. Close this up and we'll see if this rear window pops open. A little bit of dirt up here, not rust, so that's good. All right, the way this works is you put in the key. I think you turn it all the way clockwise, and there you go. Window pops open. It's a great sign. And holds itself open. Looks good. Looks good on the inside here. Just a minor amount of rust. That's gonna be normal. Nothing to worry about either side. Looks great. The wheels have your typical corrosion. This is the rear spare tire. These will be some sort of aluminum alloy or magnesium alloy. Generally, they don't rust in the same way that your iron does. but you still have corrosion. Spare tire looks decent, probably the original spare tire if I'm guessing. It has some hard, gnarly rubber. I think it's more plastic than rubber at this point. That'll probably have to be changed. Let me see if I can get a date code on this tire. Yeah, here's the date code right here. Sorry it's upside down for you, but you look for this here and it looks like the 34th week of 2006. So this is one old spare tire. You definitely wouldn't want to run on this at this point. Okay, you got me. Push comes to shove, I'm gonna throw that tire on, but I'm not gonna go over about 40 miles an hour. In comparison, these Cooper Discover AT3s look pretty good. Lots of tread left on all 4 tires. That's great because a new set of tires for a vehicle like this is gonna cost you pretty much over $1,000. That's a lot of money, so money saved. I'll use these until they're worn a little bit more before replacing them with maybe something a little bit more aggressive. These tires have the Mountain Snowflake tire. That means these are good for all 4 seasons. They do better than regular tires for that. Looks like these tires were likely produced in the 40th week of 2021, so they're relatively new, a couple of years old. 3 out of the 4 tires read 31 PSI. The spec is 32, so I'm pretty happy with that. I had 1 tire at about 22 PSI, so I pumped that up. It's only fair before you take a car for a test drive to make sure you've got all the tire pressure you need. Otherwise, you might have one side or more that will feel wrong. Okay, let's get to the fun stuff. Let's take a look at the engine compartment. All right, right off the bat, as suspected, these struts are blown on both sides. So there's my trusty air pump to hold up the hood so it doesn't fall in on me as I'm checking things out. All right, let's take a look at the brake fluid. Looks like the levels are good. Looks nice and clear. I'm not gonna open up, don't want any moisture to go in there, but it's good enough for a test drive. Coming around here, looking at that power steering fluid. Pretty dark from the outside. Again, I'll open that up when I'm in a better situation, but it's got fluid anyway. Windshield washer, no problems there. Coming around to your coolant reservoir, looks between the full mark and the empty mark. The empty mark's all the way down there at the bottom, so that all looks good. This particular car does not have a transmission fluid check. You pretty much have to open it up. They have a fill hole, a drain hole, and a check hole. So when it's time, you'll have to do that. Now inside of here, I'm noticing quite a bit of rust on some of those components. That'll probably have to be treated. Down here as well, I'm guessing someone probably spilled some fluid of some sort. Usually it's brake fluid that does stuff like this on the inside, but I'll put some fluid film or other lanolin based product to stop the spread of that rust. Coming over here, a lot more rust right here. It's still, you know, it's a little puckered under the paint. Not horrible. Like I said, I think some sort of lanolin based product like fluid film would be great to just spray on there, let it soak in, and it'll probably retard the speed at which that rusts out. You can't see it because I put my pump in the way, but it goes all the way underneath the battery compartment as well. So some rust here and there. Steering rack, you see the connection is a little rusted out there as well. Probably okay. I'll make sure that the steering is nice and tight once I actually drive it. All right, let's go check the oil. Looks like a pretty new battery just from the amount of dust and clutter on it. I don't see a date on it, but looks good anyway. Oil filter, not too old looking. I'm gonna guess somebody changed that relatively recently, maybe in the last 1,000 miles or so. I do like having the oil filter up on top on this vehicle. Now, a lot of you would probably take off the plastic cover, but I'm not gonna bother. I just checked the oil. The oil looks nice and clean, no problems there. you have to make sure that you take it on a nice test drive and then recheck your oil and see if there's any signs of moisture or cloudy change to your oil. That generally means you've got a head gasket leak. These engines are pretty much bulletproof. I think it has a timing chain, so you know, unless someone really overheated it, ran out of coolant or otherwise, you're going to have a pretty solid vehicle. But do check for a head gasket leak, because that's quite a pain to have to replace. You might have to remachine the head on this, and that would be relatively costly. Here's another thing that I'm looking for. I'm looking for some rips or creases in this inner fender well here. Looks great. I would have expected some of that. A lot of these 2007s had that. Going over here to the other side, yeah, no cracks, no bulges, looks straight. Again, this vehicle has not been abused. Everything checks out as far as the exterior and some of the driveline components. They all look pretty good. Oil looks good. So let's turn it on, see how she sounds. Starts right up. Looks real good. No lights on the dash that I'm going to be concerned about. Emergency brakes on, that's why you see the brake light. Well, I'm not sure if you can see this. This engine has no vibration at idle, none. Wow. That's rock solid. Absolutely rock solid. No adverse noises. It sounds like a brand new engine as far as I'm concerned. The valves are very quiet. Lifters sound quiet. Cam, no problem. Pretty excited about that. For 345,000 miles, this FJ Cruiser sure drives nicely. It's really smooth down the road. At higher speeds, it's between 60 and 75 miles per hour. I notice absolutely no shake or shimmy. Drives real nice. However, between about 20 miles an hour and 40 miles an hour, depending on my throttle, I will get some shudder. I believe that is transmission shudder or torque converter shudder that's been talked about in the forums. To avoid that, I just back off on the throttle. It goes right away and no issues from there. So that's something I'll have to do a little bit more research on. I'm not too terribly concerned about it. I believe that that can be taken care of either with some fluid change or perhaps some sort of additive. The brakes also seem very smooth. There's no warping of the rotor, so I don't feel any shimmy in the steering wheel when I come to a stop. And importantly, the AC blows nice and cold in this hot weather. This is obviously a very well-maintained FJ Cruiser. It feels just about as smooth as my 100,000 mile Chrysler Town & Country minivan. So that's pretty impressive. Thank you, Toyota, and thank you for the previous owner. This is a single owner vehicle. Obviously, they took very good care of it. I'm also getting just a touch of power steering noise. You can hear it when the engine RPM is right around 1,000 to 1,500 RPM. That power steering pump has probably seen 345,000 miles. It's a very minor whine. Also, you can see there are no check engine lights or other warning lights on the dash. One last thing to note, the steering wheel definitely is cocked to the left here. Since this has vehicle stability control and there's a sensor in the steering wheel, we'll likely have to realign this. After the test drive, I rechecked the oil. There is no water or foaminess or milkiness to the oil. Looks great. All right, so the bottom line, what is my $5,400 buying me? Buying me a frame that has very little rust on it, a little bit of rust in the engine compartment, an engine that looks like it's been immaculately taken care of, a transmission with a slight shudder. That's going to be my biggest concern. It does not have rear differential lockers. It doesn't have your A-Track electronic control system for your traction. Those are big negatives, but I think we can work around it. So this is a really great rig, and honestly, I think the price is right. So am I going to buy it? Yes, I am.